It is Friday, August the 23rd, and this is Political Palette. The Democratic National Convention has now officially wrapped. That means we're going to dive deep into all the speeches and things that happened during the convention. RFK Jr. says goodbye to his presidential run and endorses former President Donald J. Trump. That and more in today's show. The 2024 Democratic National Convention, held from August the 19th to the 22nd in Chicago, was a pivotal event for the Democratic Party, as they officially nominated Vice President Kamala Harris for president and Governor Tim Walz for vice president. The convention took place at the United Center, with additional activities hosted at McCormick Place, drawing in between 5,000 to 7,000 delegates and thousands of more visitors to the city. This year's convention was marked by strong messages of unity and progress, focusing on the party's commitment to democracy and freedom. Key speeches were delivered by prominent figures, including former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama, who electrified the audience with their calls to reject the Republican nominee and rally around the Democratic ticket. The convention also showcased the Democratic Party's track record on delivering progress for Americans and laid out the stakes for the upcoming election. Security was a significant concern, with $50 million allocated for federal security, and the event was designated a national special security event. Despite the heightened security, protests and demonstrations, particularly regarding U.S. support for Israel and Gaza, were a notable backdrop to the proceedings. The convention concluded with Kamala Harris's acceptance speech, where she outlined her vision for America and emphasized the importance of building on the progress made over the past few years. Vice President Harris delivered a strong and unifying message at the DNC. Here's a little clip up of some of the key moments at her speech.
Our nation with this election has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. Not as members of any one party or faction, but as Americans. And let me say, I know there are people of various political views watching tonight, and I want you to know, I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self.
Now, Kamala Harris has made history as the first black woman and the first woman of South Asian descent to accept a major party's nomination for President of the United States. She acknowledged this momentous occasion, speaking to the importance of representation and the progress that has been made, while also emphasizing the work that remains. Harris's speech centered on themes of unity, progress, and strength of the Democratic Party's diverse coalition. She highlighted the achievements of the Biden-Harris administration, such as job growth, infrastructure improvements, and efforts to combat climate change, and framed the upcoming election as a critical choice between continuing this progress or regressing under Republican leadership. Harris emphasized the need for economic justice, calling for policies that would close the wealth gap, provide greater access to health care, and ensure that every American has the opportunity to succeed. She spoke passionately about raising the minimum wage, expanding health care access, and making sure that corporations pay their fair share of taxes. One of the central themes of her speech was the defense of democracy. Harris warned against the dangers of authoritarianism, voter suppression, and misinformation. She called on Americans to protect their right to vote and to stand up for democratic institutions. Harris laid out her vision for the future, which included continued investment in green energy, education reform, and criminal justice reform. She also promised to address gun violence and protect women's reproductive rights, framing these issues as essential to the well-being of the nation. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about Tim Walz's speech at the DNC. I really personally enjoyed it, and I wanted to show you some of his speech, so I'm going to play now some parts of his DNC speech.
If you've never experienced the hell that is infertility, I guarantee you know somebody who has. And I can remember praying each night for a phone call, the pit in your stomach when the phone would ring, and the absolute agony when we heard the treatments hadn't worked. It took Gwen and I years, but we had access to fertility treatments. And when our daughter was born, we named her Hope. Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love you. I'm letting you in on how we started a family because this is a big part about what this election is about. Freedom. When Republicans use the word freedom, they mean that the government should be free to invade your doctor's office. Corporations free to pollute your air and water. And banks free to take advantage of customers. But when we Democrats talk about freedom, we mean the freedom to make a better life for yourself and the people that you love. Freedom to make your own healthcare decisions. And yeah, your kids' freedom to go to school without worrying about being shot dead in the hall. Look, I know guns. I'm a veteran. I'm a hunter. And I was a better shot than most Republicans in Congress, and I got the trophies to prove it. But I'm also a dad. I believe in the Second Amendment, but I also believe our first responsibility is to keep our kids safe. That's what this is all about. The responsibility we have to our kids, to each other, and to the future that we're building together, in which everyone is free to build the kind of life they want. But not everyone has that same sense of responsibility. Some folks just don't understand what it takes to be a good neighbor.
Now, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota and a Democratic vice presidential nominee, highlighted his roots in small-town America and his dedication to public service. He emphasized his military background and his commitment to serving all Americans, which he tied into broader democratic themes of unity and resilience. Walz spoke about the importance of accessible health care and strong public education, echoing the Democratic platform's focus on these critical issues. He shared personal stories of his work in Minnesota to expand access to health care and improve the education system, pledging to bring that same commitment to the national stage. Similar to other speakers at the convention, Walz emphasized the need for unity within the country, urging Americans to come together to face the challenges ahead, including economic inequality and climate change. One of the most touching moments during the convention was when Gus Walz, Tim Walz's teenage son, was shown on camera tearing up during his father's speech. Gus, who is neurodivergent, expressed pride and emotion as he watched his father accept the nomination. His reaction resonated with many viewers, who saw it as a genuine and heartfelt moment that contrasted with the often scripted nature of political events. And also, many found Gus's display of emotion to be endearing and a reminder of the personal side of politics. But there was also some who criticized the moment, which sparked discussions on social media. Despite the criticism, the Walz family received widespread support, with many commending Gus for his bravery and openness. Now the Kamala Harris campaign is actually making signs that says Gus on them, which is really interesting. But I will say, Gus's emotional moment there, that really resonated with a lot of voters, and it even resonated with me. I mean, I saw that, I was like, wow, if my father was up there, or even a mother, right, running for president or vice president, whatever it might be, I'd be so damn proud of them for doing that job. And that's such a brave thing to do, right? And I think Gus was really showing his true emotion. He wasn't acting. Now, I did see a lot of far right and just simply right, people on the right who were just downing Gus and saying, oh, this kid's stupid and all this stuff. It's just so disgusting to see this happen and play out, and to see people act like this. I mean, we're supposed to be coming together. We're supposed to be unifying and being Americans, being strong Americans, showing the world who we are. But instead, we got people on the right who are just repeatedly bashing, people in the Democratic Party who didn't even do anything wrong. They might have smiled the wrong way or pronounced a word the wrong way. I'm sick, so I've been, a little bit, pronouncing some things wrong during the podcast filming, but that should not mean that I'm going to get ridiculed and attacked by like everybody and their mom. So I feel like that side of politics is a little gross, I would say. I am glad, though, that Gus was there. I'm glad he was so proud of his father. I mean, I think we're all proud of him, though, for really going from coach to vice president nominee, who quite literally might win. So that's the next segment we're going to talk about. Can this new ticket win? But I also wanted to talk about RFK Jr. and him dropping out of the race, so we're actually going to go into that as well after this commercial break. Stay tuned.
Discover Empower United, a beacon of hope and empowerment for LGBTQ+ youth. We are dedicated to providing the support, advocacy, and resources necessary to uplift and inspire our community. Our mission is to create a world where every LGBTQ+ young person feels valued, accepted, and empowered to reach their full potential. At Empower United, we offer a variety of programs and services designed to address the unique challenges faced by LGBTQ+ youth. We need your help to continue our vital work. By donating as little as $5, you can make a significant impact on the lives of LGBTQ+ youth. Visit empowerunited.org today to learn more about our programs and to make your donation.
Now, we're going to pose a very important question here that I've been meaning to ask ourselves for quite a while now, and that is, can Kamala Harris and Tim Walz win the 2024 election? Let's break it all down. First, let's talk about Kamala Harris. As a sitting vice president, she's no stranger to the national stage. Harris has built a reputation as the champion of social justice, reproductive rights, and climate action. She's fought tirelessly for progressive causes, and her experience makes her a strong contender to take the top spot in the Oval Office. But it's a big but. She's facing a tough political landscape with the GOP rallying around Trump, but the stakes couldn't be higher. Her ability to galvanize the Democratic base, and particularly African American and younger voters, will be crucial. Now let's talk about her running mate, Tim Walz. The governor of Minnesota, Walz brings a blend of progressive policies and Midwest pragmatism. He's a former National Guard member and has been a steady leader who's known for his Minnesota nice demeanor. Don't let that fool you. Walz has shown that he can throw a punch when needed. His ability to appeal to working class voters in the Midwest could be the key to flipping critical swing states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. These states are the battlegrounds that could decide the election, and Walz's connection to these regions can't be underestimated. So can this duel win? Absolutely. But it won't be easy. They're up against a deeply polarized electorate and an opponent who's shown he can defy political gravity. For Harris and Walz, it's not just about winning the debates or fundraising. It's about turning out the vote in key demographics and battleground states. But here's the kicker. Harris and Walz need to do more than just win over Democrats. They have to appeal to independents and moderates who are tired of the chaos and looking for steady, competent leadership. If they can do that, if they can show they're the ticket for both progress and stability, then yes, they can absolutely win. But what do you think? Can Harris and Walz win this thing? Hit me up on social media at Matty Unhinged or at Matty.unhinged on Instagram and learn a little bit more. Or go to speakpipe.com/politicalpalette and send in a voice note up to 90 seconds that I might just play right here on the show. And we'll go over a little bit. Hey, is Kamala Harris going to win? Is Tim going to win? Let's find this out together. Let's talk about it. Let's have a good, productive conversation. I really think productive conversations are critical, especially in this key point we're at right now in politics, where we're close to an election season. Well, we're already in the thick of the election season, really. We're just counting down the days until pretty soon it's going to be election day. You know, November's not going to be here and that long. It's going to be here before you know it. And you'll need to cast that vote, and we'll need all the information to really, you know, decide who we're voting for. And I think I've personally made the decision. You know, back when I started this podcast, I kind of forget how long ago I started up this podcast. It was all the way back in May. Okay, so all the way back in May, right? I started this podcast, and not gonna lie, a lot of crazy stuff has happened. I'm sure if you look at some of the episode titles and stuff, you'll see some crazy stuff has hit the fan since then, right? Completely new nominee now for the Democrats. Trump almost got assassinated. You know, just a lot of different stuff. But I will say this. This has opened up a lot of people's eyes. They want something new. They want something different. They want something inspirational to the next generation of people. And I think that's what we're all yearning towards. We're tired of the old. We can't go back to the old, right? And that's really my perspective. That's my point of view and where I'm coming from this. Of course, you could disagree or agree to disagree, really. I've had people try to argue with me on many fronts, and family, friends, people on social media, right? And I feel like every single time they kind of bring up points that really don't make sense. Like, I've heard situations where you know, they'll be like, oh, well, you know, a woman can never win as president because men are so superior. I mean, not only is that common sexist, it's not going to win you an election at all. And I don't think anytime soon people with that kind of language and bashing other people, that I don't think that resonates with voters. I don't think it resonates with women voters. I mean, I've noticed one thing, and this is pretty solid here. I think women Republicans feel a little out of place. They feel a little attacked. And, you know, some of them, they don't want to admit it. They don't want to come out about it, of course, you know. And maybe their husband is a diehard Republican and they just have to go with it. But, like, there are a lot of women in this country who feel directly attacked by the Republicans. I mean, of course, gender's on the ballot this year. That's just a plain fact. And reproductive rights and freedoms is on the ballot too. And I think that's what's going to win the election for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Honestly, I think reproductive freedom is the number one thing that's going to win them the election this year. I mean, if it wasn't for that, I'm not sure. I'm sure there would be a whole different issue at stake, but them taking away that right, Republicans taking away that right. And yes, Republicans did take away that right because Donald Trump installed Supreme Court justices who literally had a lot to do with that whole process in getting Roe versus Wade overturned, right? So a lot of women this election season, I feel like they feel directly attacked. And this is not in a way like 2016 or anything. This is a whole different creature. This is a whole different beast. And honestly, another thing I've seen is the sexism very strong on the more masculine Republican side, right? And that does not sit well with a lot of women, obviously. Like, I imagine attacking another gender and calling them dumb and stupid and all this different stuff. And it's just not the right attack. I mean, I just don't know where Donald Trump's going with this. I mean, if I was Donald Trump's campaign advisor, okay, I'd be losing my stuff right now. I'd be pulling out my hair because the stuff Donald Trump's saying, on Truth Social and just in public has been absolutely just damning to his campaign. And he had all this momentum from almost being shot and all this different stuff, an incredible Republican National Convention, right? And then he kind of just undid all of that, live right before your eyes. And everybody was complaining like, oh, Kamala Harris's DNC speech was only 30 minutes long. Well, I could tell you a thing or two. And what I'm going to tell you right now is Donald Trump's speech was 90 minutes long, okay? Donald Trump's speech was like triple the amount of time as Kamala's speech. But guess what? Donald Trump's speech got people literally falling asleep and like, wow, this is the same old Trump again. And I watch that speech. I watch Kamala's speech. That's my job. As running a political podcast, I have to watch everything from every side. I even watch Trump's own events, the X interview with Elon Musk. I've watched all of that stuff to try to figure out what's going on here. And what I see is a deep issue with Trump, right? Where he just cannot let go that narcissistic personality disorder. And yes, it's a disorder. It's stuck to him. It's clinged to him. Trump derangement syndrome, right? I mean, the voters literally, they don't understand what direction they're going. Like Trump will literally, say all these different things, all these different words, and then you piece them all together, and it's like, what? This doesn't make much sense, does it? Did a 5-year-old do this? Did they write this speech? But his RNC speech, and I know his, I already talked about his RNC speech before in another show here, but I will say that speech in the beginning part, it was great up until it just kept going on and on and on. And then it just felt like the same boring energy again. With Kamala Harris's speech, she did it all in 30 minutes, right? She packed this all in. Unity, progress, freedom, future, all packed into one. This is what Kamala did this time around. And it just beautiful to see the way she packaged this deal, and also the way that the speakers kind of went on the DNC, right? It started with Joe Biden. They said sayonara to him. They said goodbye, waving the USA flags. By the way, the DNC was the most American event. Definitely. The RNC didn't even have a single American flag other than mass deportations, which, by the way, I could get into detail about how bad that is, mass deportations. I mean, imagine you're someone who's been living in this country, but you don't have like every single document, or like you didn't have the money to do this, or let's just say the cop looks at you the wrong way, right? Oh, boom, deported, right? I mean, these types of things could literally turn us into a communist Soviet Russia type society. I mean, come on. I know I'm getting a little bit, unhinged here. That's kind of my job though, Matty Unhinged, the whole brand. But I'm just being honest, what's going on here? We need to get to the bottom of this. And I have a feeling voters will. In November, they'll vote Trump out, and he'll never win again. That's quite frankly what is going to happen, word for word. The GOP doesn't want him anymore. They're going to push him right out. They're going to push him to the curb, and that's going to be it, right? So when you look at things like the whole situation from the beginning to the end, where we started, where we're at today, we got a way better option. And, everybody's going to say like, oh, Kamala was in office for 3.5 years and didn't do anything. She's vice president of the United States. Did Pence do anything when he was in office as vice president? No, he just stood there. Literally, VPs are most of the time doing these little social fun activities to help bring the people closer to the presidential office, right? And try to inspire people, right? That's kind of the whole job there. And maybe do some little small tasks from time to time, offer some recommendations, but not whole policies altogether. Come on now. You got to get more real than that. But, I mean, Tim Walz, do you think he's going to be doing much? No, but he'll be there for Kamala when she needs him, right? I mean, vice presidential picks are not really that strong in America. I mean, they're there, right, in case something happens to the president, but they're not the main policymakers. They are not the main administration. They have their own little smaller version of the administration that basically they advise each other on different things. And, they do some of the public events out there in the public. There's just a lot of stuff that is kind of just misconstrued and messed up altogether. And that's what we need to get to the bottom of. So as we move into our next segment and our last segment in today's show, I wanted to talk about RFK Jr. Okay. He announced today, by the way, this is fresh off the press. He announced that he's going to be dropping out of the race. So for those of you who might have been off the grid, RFK Jr. has been running as an independent candidate, bringing a mix of populist rhetoric and controversial stances, particularly on vaccines and public health measures. His campaign was always a bit of an outlier, attracting attention from both sides of the political spectrum. But as of today, RFK Jr. has officially suspended his campaign and announced his support for none other than Donald Trump. In a press conference in Arizona, RFK Jr. stated that he no longer sees a path to victory for his campaign, but what's even more shocking is his decision to throw his support behind Trump. Kennedy's campaign has always walked a fine line, appealing to delusioned Democrats and Republicans who are skeptical of the GOP establishment and a good chunk of independents. So why Trump? Well, let's dissect that. To understand this endorsement, we need to look at the numbers and the strategy behind it. RFK Jr. wasn't exactly setting the world on fire with his polling numbers, but he did have a solid base of support, particularly among voters who are deeply skeptical of the government mandates. Be it on vaccines, lockdowns, or climate regulations, many of his supporters were crossovers from Trump's base who felt disenfranchised by the mainstream narrative and gravitated towards Kennedy's anti-establishment stance. His endorsement of Trump might seem strange on the surface, but when you consider the overlap in their voter bases, it starts to make a bit more sense. Kennedy himself hinted at this during his announcement, noting that his presence on the ballot in key swing states could act as a spoiler, potentially handing the election to Kamala Harris if he stayed in. By endorsing Trump, he's essentially consolidating the anti-establishment vote in Trump's favor. This move could very well tip the scales in Trump's direction in critical battleground states like Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Michigan. Now let's talk about the reaction. This isn't just a bombshell for voters, it's a seismic event in the political world. The Democrats, understandably, are not very thrilled. Their initial action, as you could expect, was to downplay the significance of Kennedy's endorsement. They argue that his support was already dwindling, and most of his remaining voters were split between Trump and Harris anyway. But let's be real. No matter how you spin it, having Kennedy endorse Trump is a blow, particularly for a party that's historically been synonymous with the Kennedy name. On the Republican side, the reaction reaction has been mixed. Trump's camp is, of course, celebrating. They see this as a huge win to help them consolidate the right-wing vote. But some Republicans are cautious, noting that Kennedy's endorsement could also galvanize the left, who are increasingly concerned about the rise of authoritarianism under Trump. There's also the matter of how this endorsement will play out among more moderate voters who are still on the fence. So what does this all mean in this election? Well, in the immediate term, it's likely to shape up the dynamics in key battleground states. Polling data suggests that a significant portion of Kennedy's supporters were already leaning towards Trump, but his official endorsement can push even more of them into Trump's column. This could be particularly impactful in states where the race is razor thin. Remember, in 2016, just a few thousand votes in a handful of states decided the election. We could be looking at a similar scenario here in 24. But beyond the numbers, there's a bigger story at play. This endorsement is a clear signal that the 2024 election isn't just a battle between two parties, it's a battle between two visions of America. On one side, you have Trump, now with the backing of a Kennedy, representing a populist, anti-establishment movement that's deeply skeptical of government authority and traditional institutions. And on the other hand, you have Kamala Harris, who's positioning herself as the defender of democracy, justice, and progressive values. The lines couldn't be clearer, and the stakes couldn't be higher. But let's not focus on the immediate fallout. What about the long-term implications? Kennedy's endorsement of Trump could have ripple effects that go across beyond November 2024. For instance, it could further polarize the electorate, driving a deeper wedge between the populist right and the progressive left. It also raises questions about the future of the Kennedy legacy. How will history remember this moment? Will RFK's decision to back Trump seen as a betrayal of the Kennedy name or a bold move that realigned American politics? Another important angle to consider is the impact on third-party candidates and the viability of independent runs in the future elections. Kennedy's campaign was one of the most high-profile independent runs in recent history, and his exit underscores the challenges that third-party candidates face in the American political system. Despite his name recognition and initial support, Kennedy found it nearly impossible to break through the two-party duopoly. His endorsement of Trump might just be seen as an acknowledgement of that reality, but it also raises some questions about how independent candidates can ever hope to succeed in such a polarized environment. So where does this lead us? Well, as we look ahead to the November election, Kennedy's endorsement of Trump adds yet another layer of complexity to an already chaotic race. For Trump, it's a potential game changer that can help him consolidate the right-wing vote and make inroads in key swing states. For Harris, it's a challenge that she'll need to overcome by doubling down on her own base and reaching out to undecided voters who might be turned off by the chaos on the right. But perhaps most importantly, Kennedy's exit from the race serves as a reminder of the stakes in this election. It's not just about who wins or loses. It's about the direction of the country. Will we continue down a path of populism and skepticism towards institutions, or will we embrace a vision of progressive governance and social justice? That's the question voters will have to answer in November, and Kennedy's decision today has only made that choice starker. Now, Matty's point of view, the segment on the podcast that everybody loves. Let's get right into it. So first, let me start by saying this. I used to have a lot of respect for RFK Jr. I admired his willingness to challenge the status quo and speak out on issues that others wouldn't touch. But it's a shame what the Democratic establishment did to him. They sued him relentlessly, blocked him from the ballots, and effectively pushed him out of the race. He should have been allowed to run for president freely and fairly, and it was wrong to take that opportunity away from him. It's moments like these that make you question just how democratic our system really is. It often feels like the elites control who we get to vote for, and it's not as open as they want us to believe. It's a shame, but we have to deal with what we've got, weigh the pros and cons, and go from there. Now, let's talk about the GOP and their decision to stick with Trump. The reality is, Trump is a toxic candidate for their movement. He's divisive, and many in the GOP are just waiting for him to ride off into the sunset. Honestly, I was surprised they even let him run again. I didn't think it would happen, but here we are. The people have spoken, and that's democracy in action, even if it's not the choice I would have made. Same goes for Kamala Harris. I would have loved to see an open convention where we could have chosen from the many younger aspirational leaders in the Democratic Party, but instead it feels like this decision was made for us. That's one of the flaws in our political system sometimes. The choice isn't really ours to make. Now, let me be clear. I see a lot of flaws in the way that Trump governs. His handling of the COVID-19 pandemic was disastrous, and it only got worse from there. The claims of election fraud, the insurrection at the Capitol, it's a never-ending list of issues. Sure, you can make excuses and theories to make things look better for him, but the fact is, he's generally unpopular, even on platforms like X, which has a strong conservative presence. I see former Trump supporters saying they're done with him, and they're not voting anymore. And what really seals the deal for me is seeing so many people in the Republican Party going against each other, voting for other nominees in the primaries. Sure, Trump won, but the party wasn't united behind him, and the Republican Party has never been in unison. And that's why I can't bring myself to vote for Trump. He's a leader of the past, and the past just shouldn't have power. We need to move forward. But this is important. I don't believe any one person could destroy this country. Our system is designed to prevent that. The checks and balances in place mean that no single leader can bring the whole country down. Even with issues with inflation, which everyone's talking about, it's not something that local politics can control entirely. Inflation is a global issue, and while Biden has done some things to mitigate its effects here in the U.S., it's not something a single politician can fix overnight. And speaking of the future, I'm tired of hearing that a woman can't be president or that men are superior. That's not a winning strategy, and that's not what America stands for. We're better than that. Let's debate real issues, not whether someone's gender or race makes them less fit to lead. I firmly believe that our country isn't on the brink of collapse. We're not heading into World War III, and our best days are still ahead. We need leaders who will lift us up, who will guide us through tough times and help us celebrate the good ones. We're coming up on our 250th anniversary of America, and I believe it's going to be a time of renewal and hope for this country. Our best days are still ahead, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into Political Palette. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these issues. So hit me up over on social media and let's get the conversation going. You could also submit up to a 90-second voice note at speakpipe.com/politicalpalette. And don't forget to support empowerunited.org. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, keep questioning, keep thinking, and keep it real.